Away to escapely. Today we continue on entering into the second half of the Aeneid. Um, Recently, there's been a lot more interest in the second half of the Aeneid, whereas even when I was in college, a lot of people have been focusing on the first half of it, which deals with Aeneas's wanderings. We'll get into some of the reasons why as this comes up. When Aeneas and his soldiers finally land at the River Tiber, you got to remember that they're slightly smaller in number after a bunch of the Trojans left back in Sicily. But they're invigorated. Aeneas came out of the underworld with some good news that they're going to win. They've got a prophecy. They've got everything set up to go. When they land, they start making camp, and Aeneas' first order is to start building walls. He's worried. He's heard that they're going to have a big fight, and people start working on it, but they need to eat. So they end up making this kind of flatbread. It's described as this really hard, crusty bread, and they basically pile berries, fruits, any vegetables, any dried meat and stuff that they have, and they pile it on, and they pass these big pieces of bread around to eat off of it. Basically, the bread is serving as almost a tray. They don't have tables set up. They don't have houses or anything set up. They don't have even tents really, because the first thing that they need to build is these walls. So they kind of hurry through it. After everything's been passed around, people actually snap the flatbread open and start gnawing on that. And Ascanius actually giggles, and people look over him and he says, "We've just eaten our tables. We were serving food off of this and passing it around, and now we've just eaten." This calls back to that awful prophecy they'd had way back at the start of the voyage. And in an interesting way, they seem to have kind of beaten this prophecy. Like they ate bread. It wasn't like they were gnawing on the table itself. And just this little bit of good news makes everybody feel much more like optimistic about what's supposed to be going on in Italy at this point. Aeneas takes a couple of picked men. They dress up in their good armor and carry some weapons, but they also bring gifts with them. And he basically asks his way and keeps getting relayed up to the nearest king. The nearest king named Latinus. He runs a kingdom called Latium. And Aeneas gets there and basically says, "My name is Aeneas. I've come from Troy." Gives his whole backstory and basically says, "I don't want to fight, but I've been told by the gods to settle here. Can I have some land? Can we be friends? Can we do this in a spirit of friendship and peace?" And things go wrong. I mean, there's still half the book left. It doesn't get to be, an easy ending for Aeneas, unfortunately. You see, Latinus, when he first hears from Aeneas, he's worried because armed men are apparently landing in his, nation. But as Aeneas is talking, he starts apparently coming around and getting kind of excited. You see, Latinus has a daughter named Lavinia. And Aeneas doesn't know this, but Lavinia is the subject of a prophecy. If she marries a foreigner, Latinus's kingdom will be great, it'll be glorious, and it'll be long lasting. Apparently, during a recent sacrifice, the swarm of bees entered into the area, which confused everybody. And Lavinia's hair seemed to catch fire without burning her or hurting her or alarming her very much in any way. That's what's going on in this painting here. This one appears to be a little bit dark. Whatever, you guys see what's going on with it. People interpreted this omen as people coming in, not hurting anybody, because weirdly enough, the bees didn't sting anything, and they just made a hive in one corner of this, big, atrium where they were making the sacrifice. And that it was going to have something to do with Lavinia. And when they asked the gods for clarification, they got this prophecy. Interesting fact, Lavinia has no speaking lines in the whole poem. Some people take this as kind of sexism by Virgil. Some people kind of, see that she's been reduced to, very like a very small role in this, oddly enough. I also like to point out that the Aeneid wasn't finished when Virgil died. And me personally, I'm an optimist about this. I like to think that Lavinia would have had speaking parts, more interesting stuff. And this is one of the things that Virgil was saying was wrong with the poem when he said he didn't want it published. Latinus offers Lavinia to Aeneas in marriage. And Aeneas is kind of surprised. But the thing is, he was told he was going to have to fight for this. And if he can make a peace treaty, he can deal with, an awkward personal life for the sake of his tired people. Of course, it doesn't go this well for Aeneas. You see, Lavinia already had a fiance, by the name of Turnus, living in a neighboring kingdom called Rutulia. He's a great warrior. They say his mom is an immortal goddess. And the thing is, when Aeneas comes in there, he has no idea Turnus even exists. Latinus marries Lavinia off to Aeneas, thinking that Aeneas is more foreign, whereas Turnus speaks the same language, literally lives, in the next kingdom and is not really that foreign. And Turnus gets snubbed. Juno looks down on this. And Juno starts, machinating. She starts plotting. You see, working for Juno are these spirits called the Furies. They live in a pit down in Tartarus, and they are horrifying to look at. They have snakes for their heads, snakes for their hair, like Gorgons, like Medusa. Their skin is all cracked, and they're constantly weeping these tears of blood. One of the impressions you get with the Furies is that every time someone breaks a promise, they feel it, because Juno is the goddess of marriage, and marriage is a promise. And their whole job is to punish people who betray their family or break promises when Juno instructs them to. The meanest and nastiest of the Furies is named Alecto. And Juno sees this opportunity to cause the Trojans more grief. She realizes at this point that she can't stop them. They're in Italy. But she can at least make Aeneas' life miserable. So she takes Alecto, the oldest and meanest of the Furies, and sends them up, I should say, actually, to Italy. While Turnus is sleeping, Alecto disguises herself as an old priestess and takes up a torch and infuses this furious anger into Turnus. Specifically, the justification is that she's punishing Latinus for breaking the promise. And this is something the Furies do in an extremely cruel way. They go after people who are adjacent and drive them into this fury and sort of punish everyone around the person to fill them with guilt, to make their lives more difficult, all this stuff. There's a great metaphor here. Literally, she sort of puts a snake on Turnus' chest and it burrows into his heart. Alecto is not done. She also goes to Latinus' wife, the Queen Amata, and puts the same fury and anger into her. And things are setting up to be really bad for Aeneas at this point. As soon as Turnus wakes up, he puts on his armor, he sends out messengers, he gathers local heroes, and he decides that these Trojans need to go. And this sets up the conflict for the last half of the book. Now, the first half of the book is about the wanderings of Aeneas. It has a lot of parallels with the Odyssey, Homer's second big epic poem. The second half of the book deals with Aeneas' fight with Turnus. And it's supposed to be like the Iliad. It's a Trojan war all over again. The Trojans are on the defensive. They've built up their walls already. They're being attacked by an enemy king who's had his wife taken away from him by a Trojan. Interestingly enough, Turnus actually calls out this parallel. At some point, he taunts Aeneas, "Can't you Trojans do anything but steal people's wives?" And we're going to see here the second half of the book that there's a lot of side characters, a lot of interesting moments with it, and then sort of a general arc of Aeneas versus Turnus. We'll see more in the next video of how Aeneas actually reacts to this, how he sets up to fight. But for now, we've mostly got our players set, and that's what I want you guys thinking. More in the next video. As always, take care, and I'll see you then.